And we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Tackle Talk. We're having a good time tonight, guys. We are going to enjoy some funny stories of a little fishing trip that I went on this weekend. But before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, don't forget, hit the bell for notifications after you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you put all, because if you're not putting all, you're not going to end up getting my live streams and my updates and some of the funny catch the catch things. Let's see who's in the house tonight. We got Robert, Jeff, Rod, Kim, Kristen, Bass Queen. I seen, who else? Jeff, look at that. What's up, guys? What are you guys doing tonight? So let's get into the good times. What do you do if you're not catching any fish? Well, there's 100 different things you can do, guys. We're going to start with just a few of them tonight. But before we get into that, guys, get out something cold to drink and have yourself a little sip. All right, so this weekend I decided to go a little bit local fishing. A buddy of mine called me up. We talk all the time. We've known each other for some years. He works down in the villages, does some trades down there. We'll call him Drywall Steve. He's a good buddy of mine. Steve does derby fishing. Steve does a lot of tournament fishing. Steve is actually a money winner when it comes to the Cabela's Big Bass Tournament a couple of years back, and he competes pretty tough in all of them. He wanted to show me some offshore fishing. And he's proven time and time again that he has the ability to do some really good offshore skills. So I wanted to give it a try. You know, I wanted to get out on the river, and we actually put in just north of Lake Griffin in the Ocklawaha River, and we put in and went south on the river into the mouth of the river basin, and then right into where it empties out into Lake Harris. I'll tell you, miserable day. Let me start this by setting the precedence of what we walked into this weekend, guys. Give me 1 second. We got some new tunes this evening, guys. We put out some interesting stuff. We're gonna come in with a little bit different vibe this evening, guys. All right, we'll touch the chat real quick. Richard Holloway says it's time. Kim, hit the thumbs up. Yeah, guys, I appreciate you guys coming out. Hit the button, you know what I mean? Because we're going to talk about some interesting stuff tonight. Mark's here. Greg's here. Jeff, SoFlo Outdoors. What's going on, guys? Rod, good you guys are in here. Take a pellet gun, pop iguana, and if you're in Florida. Yeah, Rod, there's money in them iguaners. You know, there's money in just about killing everything down here. It's interesting. But, so my buddy said he wanted to do some offshore fishing, and when I thought to myself offshore, I'm used to Florida being like, 1 to 3 to maybe 6 foot max, and what we actually found out is we got like 7.5 inches of rain over a 2-day period here, and they didn't open the actual dam up on the Ocklawaha for like 3 days. So the water was just sitting stagnant. We fished probably 2.5 hours of solid fishing without a single bite. And then my buddy, he says, what do you know about offshore fishing? You know, what do you know about drop shotting? And I'm thinking, drop shot in Florida, huh? And I know a lot of you guys are thinking drop shot. You know, for those of you guys that are fishermen, you think, okay, that means we're doing something vertical here in some really deep water. We're utilizing our electronics. Yes and no. Now, the southern version of drop shot, which is the same as the northern version of drop shot, just minus the depth. We ended up fishing the basin area of the Ocklawaha and North Lake Griffin, and that's in the Harris chain, and found that drop shots are actually very effective. I wouldn't have thought it was, but you get down 18, 20 feet, you've got 1 to 3 feet of vegetation on the bottom pushing its way up, and sometimes just suspending the bait at 1 to 3 feet above that vegetation. So technically, if the vegetation's a foot or 2 foot high, it's just sitting about a foot above that and bringing that back to the boat slowly. I saw some of the coolest, whitest bass. And I mean, they're just standard bass. These are standard Florida largemouth bass. But the fact that they were in the deep the majority of their life meant that these bass really had no dark coloration. Now, here's where the story part comes in, guys. You ready for this? Give me a second, because I'm gonna get a little stressed out when I tell you guys this. So just give me a minute to breathe. All right, so I'm not wearing a hat tonight. As you guys see, the hair's in disarray because I've been literally pulling it out. And I'm going to tell you why. On the desk in front of me, guys, is 1, 2, 3. The fourth camera is behind me now. I've already put it down. I'm so disgusted. Let me grab it because I want to show you guys the whole thing. Okay, so I've also got this camera, my underwater release and catch cam. And then I've got my drone. Okay. So I shot a killer video this Sunday, all right? I have some really epic footage, you understand? Here's the issue. Okay, so I'm working with a 2 terabyte solid state drive computer and a 12 terabyte tower. Now, some of my file sizes for doing video edits, the Headwaters one I've been working on is 1.74 terabytes of video data. Now, I transfer that to a 2 terabyte solid state drive external, and then I utilize that into the computer for the editing software to keep the computer solid state drive to a minimum. The issue comes in when I have to upload not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 GoPros and a drone worth of footage. Because all of a sudden I'm exceeding the 2 terabyte solid state drive that's in the computer. So I have to transfer these things in pieces because each one of these GoPros has a 1 terabyte card in it. Now we're talking terabytes here. This is massive amounts of data. I record in 30 frames per second, 4K all the time. Yes, I could save a lot of data. Yes, I could have smaller files. Yes, I could do 100,000 different things. But the reality of the situation is I like to be able to crop it. I like the full color. I like to be able to manipulate it a little bit more. And with higher resolutions like 4K, 30 frames, I don't go as far as 60 because I'm not really doing that much slow motion. But the key is I have to somehow get all that onto my 2 terabyte solid state drive computer. And then from there, I can piece it and parcel it to other drives. And you know, most of the time I transfer each piece of that puzzle into the big 12 terabyte tower. And then from there, I'll look at the video and determine one of those sheets like I show you guys. And then I'll take everything and bring it into the computer itself and then manipulate it from there into the edit. Well, I started doing that today. And hold on one second. So I got some really awesome drone footage, right? The first thing I uploaded was the drone footage. This thing's flying around us while we're I'm not even going to tell you guys because it's epic. It was so epic, okay? I got this thing flying around us. We're casting. Steve hooks up 4.5, 5 pounder in the middle of nowhere. Okay, he's down in a trench, drop shotting this thing in. It's a beautiful hookup. I got a camera positioned right behind him, so as he's doing this sweeping hook set, you see how the music's building up? This is how fantastic. This was the music that I was going to use for this fish catch as the drone's coming around, and you're going to see all of it, and it's like, wow, this is actually happening right now. Yes. 3 different angles, 4 different angles, a release cam. I mean, this is getting ready to be fired, right? So I'm looking through my computer, and as there's files coming in from the GoPros, right, from the cards, the little SD cards that go in these, the micro SDs that I then load into the side of the computer via one of these. So as data is going into the computer, there's data that's going from the computer directly to the external solid-state drives, right? I start looking through the files because I'm pulling them out as I'm going to make an edit for tonight's video, because I wanted to have something to release at 7 o'clock prior to, so you guys could see a little bit about the trip and why I chose this particular topic tonight. So I start to see that there's file names with 1 in the brackets and 2 in the brackets, and the majority of the time that means copy. That's a copy of that, you know. So somehow between the transfer from the GoPro to the solid state drive, I'm looking in one of the external solid state drives and I'm seeing the same file names, right? So I'm thinking these are redundant. These are somehow it's copied these things, and that's what's taking 2 hours and 45 minutes to transfer 973 megabytes, right? It's redundant copying. So I go through and I start deleting these things, right? And it's a lot of them. I'm thinking to myself, wow, man, I only put like 116 files on here, and there's like 330 of them, and I'm just deleting away and deleting away and deleting away. Well, as I'm deleting these files away, and these files are downloading into the computer, and I'm putting them back at the micro SD cards back into the GoPros, I'm reformatting the cards. So I get ready to do an edit for you guys tonight, a little video to watch, and I find out that I deleted about 90% of the fishing video that I recorded. I deleted, and the fact that I thought it was redundant should have been a little sign in my head not to do it. I pushed right on, boys and girls. I powered right through it. I devastated tonight's video, guys, so that one's on me. Yeah, I was crying inside, man. I got a hold of my buddy Steve. I hit him up at 2 o'clock today. I'm like, dude, I'm in the middle of the edit. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm just going to put together a you know what I'm saying? A really cool cast to catch with that whole drone thing, man. This is going to be fire, dude. Like, you have no idea, guys. The camera angles I had set up on Buddy's boat, like, he'd never seen anything like this. Between all the different cameras that are up in the middle of fishing, I'm launching a drone. And guys, when I say I have drone skills, Okay, you know how you watch those YouTube videos, the shorts and the Instagram shorts, where the guy's like trying to reach up and catch the drone, you know what I mean? And then shut the motors down so it doesn't like hit him in the hand and then fall. I don't do any of that, okay? I set it up on the deck, I launch. I do my setup, I do all my filming, and I literally, while the boat's moving, land the drone myself. I don't use a return to home feature. I don't do anything like that. I fly drones and I landed it right back on the deck. It's all on video. You understand what I'm saying? The whole series of events. This was going to be like a really cool inside behind the scenes, but really neat version of a fishing trip. Yeah. That which will go wrong will. I think that's Murphy's Law, right? Yeah, right in the emotions isn't even the word. It isn't even, I can't even begin to explain to you guys how bad that's like really hurting my heart, because this was a really killer fishing trip. Basically, my buddy schooled me in my own techniques. Like I mean, granted, I caught the biggest fish of the day, but I struggled. You know what I mean? And Buddy showed me things that I would have never thought to try. So the reason we have tonight's episode of, you know, what would you do? You know, what do you do when the fish aren't biting? Guys, honestly, how many techniques do you know? Think about it right now. As far as what you're used to fishing and the locations that you're used to fishing. So you have the basics. You have your power fishing, which is going to be your 5/0 hooks, your 3/0 heavy gauge hooks, your 40 to 70 to 100-pound braid, your big 5/0 flipping hooks, your big, you know, frog hooks, big hooks, you know, power line, power braid, getting in the muck, coming up with fish, coming up with 10 pounds of hydrilla, coming up with a lily pad. Whatever the case may be, right? You know, there's power fishing. Then there's the finesse fishing. Come with your lighter line, your tying leaders. You've got size 1 hooks, 1/0, 2/0 hooks. You know, you're starting to get a lot more finessey. You're looking for that worm, that the shaky head presentation, okay? That should be a standard. You should have that in your game box, something to throw on a lighter lure weight. Then you have your big swim bait fisherman kind of guys. You know, they throw these huge, massive 4-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, 4-ounce baits. They're throwing them on 2X, 3X heavy frog sticks, 8-foot. You know, these guys are running 75 to 100-pound braid on these giant baits. Is that something you do? Have you ever tried it? Do you think it'll work in your area? You know, here we go again. Flipping, pitching. Ever done it? You any good at it? Are you actually accurate with it? Are you silent on your entry? Are you scaring more fish? Are you loud? Are you still kind of awkward at it? Is it something you're not used to? The presentation itself, something you guys should think about. What I learned this weekend, what was really, really interesting about Sunday's trip that you guys unfortunately might not ever get to see, just based on the fact that I think I pretty much cooked everything. Unless I can go through 12 terabytes of data and possibly find these files literally just were moved. Sometimes they end up in a transfer, you know, and what happens is during the transfer, my in-stream or downstream, upstream goes to downstream, and somehow in the middle stuff gets put away and ends up duplicated. I can't tell you. I really can't. There's too much going on when it comes to this, which leads me to believe I just need a bigger computer. That'll solve all my problems. And I've been looking at them, but the reality of the situation is I'm like, this is really what I want to do. I really need another computer. I mean, there's enough crap in front of me right now. You guys have no idea. And it just seems to, you just have to add to it, you know. And then redundancies come in. I'm going to have to develop another system of thinking when it comes to, now I already made the rule, don't reformat a memory card until you're positive that the data is where it's supposed to be. But I also have another rule that says make sure you move all the data off the computer before you start downloading new data. Don't try to do it at the same time. Yeah, I broke both of those. Bass Queen says our daughter edits our videos because she is the only one with a good computer. She doesn't fish. I can't tell you how much awesomeness don't get in our videos. It's painful. I know. But, you know, Bass Queen, and here's the thing. I'm getting ready to start. Yeah, Rod says money, money, money. That's a hobby, Rod. You know that. I'm getting ready to start doing a little something different. I've decided that we're only going to do cast to catch on bigs. Like I told you guys last time, we had that last video, or the last video we did, the last tackle talk. If you looked at the channel since then, matter of fact, if you're just joining us now or you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like button. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you any money. We don't have any kind of contract together just because you sub to the channel, okay? It's okay. I'm just a normal guy, all right? I fish a lot, and I show it to you. So that's kind of the cool part of what I like doing, but... Okay, so here we go. Back to what we were talking about. New to the channel and all that, you know, you got to make sure you say that. How do you add enough to a fishing video? We'll talk about that later. Let's get back and let's finish this whole subject before we learn too much. And that the guy leans there. Hey, look, Outlaw's in here. Shows me how to fish all the time. So yeah, so here we go. Another guy, a perfect example. Unfortunately, guys, my friends are hammers. Okay, hammers. Everyone I know, if I fish with you, more than likely you're a hammer. And when we're out on the water, everything looks like nails. Everything. So that leads me to this adventure this Sunday, right? So I tell my buddy, I says, look, we caught 4 fish real quick within the first, I don't know. I'm not going to say real quick. I'll say once we hit the mouth, once we hit the basin where the river exits out into the main lake, there's a big depression there, 25, 28, 30 feet coming directly off that channel. And my buddy was throwing the drop shot in there and bringing it through. And I mean, he's bringing up quality fish, 4.5, 5 pounds every fish. And I'm thinking, wow, this is fantastic. I said, let's do let's get into my comfort zone now. Let's get off this, offshore stuff and let's start to travel around the lake. We'll find some spots. So we do. We took back off a couple of spots. Of course, the chatterbait ends up being the one that catches the biggest fish of the day. But what got interesting is I told Steve, I said, a lot of this water is really, really terrible. Like, it literally is like, because it rained for a solid 2 days and like 7.5 inches, the clarity on the water was 0. It was honestly 1 inch, maybe 2 inches. And it looked like chocolate milk, stirred up bottom, just nasty, right? Nasty. You couldn't tell anything, but we're pulling fish in the deep. So where it gets really interesting is I asked my buddy, I said, does this lake have any clear water? And he said, absolutely, I'll show it to you. So we take off. All this was on the video that's probably disappeared as well. And we head across the lake. Well, as we do, what gets really interesting is we actually find clear water. And when I say clear water, guys, have you ever seen water that's so clear it's too clear? We're looking at 18 to 20 foot water straight down and making out objects on the bottom in every direction. All of a sudden, you look back and there's a chocolate water line and then crystal clear. So here I am. I'm like, oh, crystal clear, moving water. Boy, I'm fitting to tear it up. I'm out here fishing. You guys ready for this? I caught nothing. I caught absolutely nothing. I looked at my buddy. I said, are you kidding me? Are there no fish in here? He says, bud, there are a ton of fish in here. He said, the problem is I never catch anything in this crystal clear water. It's so clear that the fish, unless you're throwing live bait, they're not even going to take a chance on it. That's how clear this. They can see everything for miles around. They're not fooled easily. And so we retreated back to the chocolate water again and proceeded to have, a drop shot fest for a little bit until we headed back. But what got interesting is just the fact that the fish were shut down. We had to cycle through chatterbaits, every type of worm you can think of. My buddy Steve was throwing a floating worm at one point, and getting strikes coming off the tops of the pads. But unfortunately, it must have been like every blind fish in the lake, because honestly, The hookup percentage was terrible for both of us, and bites were limited. My worm was 0 for 0 for 0, and I threw it for hours, you guys, hours. All right, checking out the chat. Looks like we got all the old crew in here, guys. I appreciate everybody coming out, hanging out. But yeah, just what I really want you to think about. And then the next thing is moving. When do you move? When do you move? When is enough enough? You know, once you've started retreating around the lake, do you end up in the community holes? Do you end up checking out new spots? Do you make the run all the way across the lake? You know, like we did the other day. Do we go all the way across to the clear water only to venture around for an hour and a half like we did and realize we're not going to get anything on this? You know, we pretty much beat ourselves up on that side of the lake in that clear water only to have not a single bite. But as soon as we retreated back, see, here's another thing to think about. Are we fishing onshore? What happens when we fish 300 yards of the shoreline and nothing occurs? What do you do? Do you continue another 300 yards of that shoreline, or do you find that break point where that water drops from 1 to 3 foot to maybe 3 to 5 to maybe 6 to 9? Because that's what we ended up doing. We ended up starting off the day in 1 to 3 and finishing the day in 8 to 15. And we had more strikes in 8 to 15 foot of water than the 0 burgers we had in 1 to 3. Even with water temperature, which is another issue that we like to talk about. Do you follow the water temperature? Do you follow the water clarity? Do you follow a turbulence as far as the motion of the water itself? We were in 10 to 15 mile an hour sustained winds for a good portion of the morning with the water temperature at 70 degrees, but by 10:30 our water temperature was 74 degrees and we dropped down to a 5 mile an hour sustained. Everything changed again. All the circumstances changed, and that's one of the things you really have to be ready for, I think, when you're doing the whole fishing, not just for fun, but you're really trying to learn different techniques. Like I was, like I said, my buddy, he does that offshore. He does that offshore fishing. He pulls a jerk bait down 15 feet. He's got 10 plus ones with weighted leader line. He's that guy. He's got the experience to come along and whack, 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 pulling a jerk bait in 15 foot of water, and then you'll just watch him with that sweeping hook set. There she is. And it's real casual, there she is. And he's hooked up and he's bringing it back to the boat. Most of the time, those are just things that you see down on the bottom or suspended 1 to 3 feet off the bottom when you're actually using down sonar and you're looking in a 15 foot, 20 foot section of drop off water. You usually just see them down there. You want to resort to something like a Carolina rig, where you can get it down there. But then the next issue is, what does the vegetation on the bottom look like? Because if you're sitting in 3 foot of grass or 3 foot of hydrilla down there and you're trying to drag a presentation across the bottom through that hydrilla, you're really not going to present anything as much as you are going to stir up a bunch of muck, depending on the size of your bait. So you kind of got to think about stuff like that and all the different little changes. We all hate re-rigging. I can tell you right now, I got so fed up re-rigging the other day that once we realized, hey, I think the drop shot is going to work, it worked. It continued working. If we'd have stayed on the drop shot all day in the mouth of the river, we'd have had a fire day. Every time we left that area to go on about our business and try other areas, it was just burning through rods. It was burning through techniques. It was pitching and flipping isolated beds. It was pitching and flipping isolated dollarweed patches. It was pitching and flipping isolated hydrilla mats. It was pitching and flipping, and then it was, we went through every trick in the book only to find out that offshore was the key. The fish were sitting off in the deep. That's rough, Bass Queen. That's the way we felt. Like I said, I didn't throw anything. Outlaw, to be honest with you, I caught not a fish. I had one bite early in the morning in the channel on the green worm. I started the day on the green worm. This is how fire the day I thought was going to be, right? I started the day with the green worm. I threw it once, I threw it twice, I threw it a third time. I was looking over talking to my buddy Steve, and we were talking about, the weather, because it really looked like it was getting ready to be bad. I mean, the fog had the visibility like maybe 3 or 4 feet on the water. That's how thick and pea soup it was. Everything was saturated. It was so thick, right? And I looked back and I'm talking to my buddy Steve, and all of a sudden my pole went snap straight forward and pop. And I looked back at him and he was like, "What was that?" And I was like, "Don't know, considering we're not moving because the dam's not open. The water's not moving in the river. You're literally sitting still. If the wind's not blowing, you're not moving, right?" And it literally hit me and popped me. And it was just that quick. That was the only thing I had. That was the only bite. I tied on another one, threw it for the whole day. Nothing. All the techniques that I was used to fishing, nothing. Tied on the drop shot, I'm hooked up. And that was what was crazy about it. It was literally just a bait presentation area, and it was on it. Mudfish, Rod. It was not a mudfish. Mudfish. It might have been a catfish. There's a pretty good chance it could have been a catfish. Hold on, you guys. I got to get something to drink. And yes, tonight's water. It's Tuesday. I'm gonna say it was a double digit myself. I'm still, and I told Buddy Steve the same thing, and he said, "What do you think it was?" And I said, "It was double digits. It was guaranteed. Guaranteed. That's how it works. Within the first couple of casts, it was on." Double digit catfish. But it's funny though. You can really sit down and try to figure out how many different techniques you really do know. I mean, how versatile is your fishing game? How many different rods do you need to carry? How many different techniques? How long can you go throwing the same thing? And it's funny that the only thing that I didn't try all day, and I had one in my bag, was a spinnerbait. Double willow blade spinnerbait. I have a double willow and I have a double Colorado blade. One for the river, one for the lake. That was the only thing I didn't throw, and now I'm kicking myself because I guarantee that would have been the best. That would have probably been the one that crushed it for me. Would have been that. Rattle traps, nothing. The water was just too much. It was these fish that were coming up, you guys. Like I said, I wish I could have done the edit because we could have all watched it, and that would have been really neat. Because it's really cool. These fish are white. These fish are no. I don't mean like white. I mean they're green, light green with blue in the scale because they're literally so deep. There's no sun penetration down 22 feet when that turbulent water is constantly mixing up that bottom. Now the mixing up that bottom at the end of the river where it dumps into the lake is interesting because that feeds a lot of smaller bait fish. It oxidizes the water in that area, so those fish fight. When I say those fish fight, those fish are on a move. They're constantly moving either up or down the river, so they're very, very strong. And at the same time, they are constantly in motion. So if you're trying to stop them or impede their motion, those fish are going to let you know about it pretty quick. Case in point, Steve caught that one of the larger fish earlier in the morning, and as he's bringing the fish in, he's talking to me, and he's like, "This fish doesn't even know it's hooked." He's like, "This fish honestly thinks it's making a trip right down the river out to the lake right now. And as soon as this fish realizes that I've got a hook in its mouth, it's going to flip." And he did too. He continued to slow up that fish and slowly bring it up. And then we watched this line go right by the boat, and it got about maybe 3-4 yards away, and he pulled it back and changed that fish, and right out of the water it came. Like, that fish had no idea that it had a hook in its mouth. It thought it was casually floating back down the river. All right. We got Outlaw says catfish. Rod says mudfish. Surprise big fish teaser says Bass Queen. I wish I could, given the information that I gave you guys earlier. I would love to say that there was a really good video coming out of this, but I kind of cached a big portion of the video. I cached it on accident. So we're going to have to take that adventure again, Steve and I. And this time we're going to make sure I'm going to make some different changes here this next time we go out on the adventure, though. I see a few things that I was watching as I was going through the edit. I might get a couple of cool cast to catches on this, as far as getting to show you guys a few different techniques. But I doubt I'm going to make like a video on it all together, because I really didn't think we were going to have bigger fish all day, but there just wasn't that many of them. And now back to the other story we were talking about earlier today with the editing. I'm thinking about only doing cast to catch on my big fish and doing like a lot of like fast forward style, like got it fish, ha ha ha, got it fish, ha ha ha, and cutting a lot of that stuff out, giving a little bit more movement to the videos, but at the same time kind of speeding up through the dinks a little bit, just making them present. Only because, when you catch volume, sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't. It's all part of the fishing trip, and that's really what I try to show you guys. That's what bothers me so bad about this whole issue I had today with this data. I'm figuring it out, though. Like I said, I'm learning everything. I'm learning everything when it comes to this fishing thing, and at the same time I'm learning, and I'm also showing you guys what I'm doing and getting the edits down and stuff, and making an adventure of it. So we'll see what happens, guys. Well, Rod says he'll run 3 poles. How many poles are you guys bringing? Let's get a little information out of you guys. How many poles are you guys bringing? Honestly, any of you guys fishing out there, how many poles do you bring? How many different techniques? You can put poles, put techniques. Coastal Fever TV's in here. Hey, buddy. Welcome, man. It's good to see you on a live. I catch you guys over there at Small Water Charters a lot, too. How many poles? The question is, Coastal Fever TV, how many rods do you bring? And if you don't want to answer how many rods you bring because you're like, I bring 12. That's okay. I get it. How many techniques are you set up for when you're out there fishing? Are you bringing the gamut, or do you have your, this is my strong point and this is what I throw? I bring these 3 baits and this is all I bring. And if these 3 don't work, I go home skunko. My number's, I think, 9. I've pretty much narrowed it down to having to bring 9, 3 rods. See, I don't know. I don't think I could survive with 3 rods. See, it depends on where I'm fishing. See, I'm with Rod on this one. But Rod, that's interesting that you say that, because I thought that same thing this weekend, and I'm glad I brought extras because I needed it. 79 Mini, welcome to the party, bud. It's a long walk, huh? Is that the long walk back to get another pole, or the long walk back to the house after you've walked the whole lake because you didn't get a fish all day? Because I know that feeling too. I don't know. I'm getting to the point now I find myself bringing less tackle. A few things I didn't try. I did not try any spinner baits, and for some reason, I brought a 1/2 ounce football head jig. Just a standard head jig. Little fluffy side one. I didn't even throw it. And then that might have been another thing that I should have tried, because that could have been pretty fire in that crystal water, because that would, small enough little 1.5 2 inch jig might have given a little bit different presentation in that clear water. But like I said, we skirted that thing for almost 2 hours in that crystal clear. I mean, it was weird. It was really weird to get into water that clear on a Harris chain lake and literally see nothing. And not that there wasn't anything down there. It's just we weren't going to see it because it saw us a mile away. I mean, literally, that they could see us from 100 feet easy, because we could see as far as our eyes could see. With your sunglasses on, you were looking at the bottom of trees 15, 20 yards away and 8, 10, 12 feet down in the water. You're looking at the base of them, trying to figure out if there's fish down there. So those fish definitely seen us, and they skedaddled. You know, in that kind of situation, the more natural looking bait that you throw, the better, and the smaller the presentation, the better. But I even tried that. You know, like my buddy said, you can sit here with live bait and crush it, but it's not the same game when you're out here throwing artificials. That's a pretty good setup. Coastal River TV Fever TV says I start with a stick bait, swim bait, soft plastic jerk bait, and those three usually do. And you know what? Tried all three of those as well. Again, 3. You know, I wish I could get it narrowed down to 3, but I mean, I threw wacky rig. I went through the gamut, and then to find out that it was actually the drop shot and a mosquito hook on 10-pound braid. I mean, it just blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind that we're in Florida, and I joke about the drop shot all the time. You know, Outlaw, he'll be the first to tell you. I like to joke about the drop shot. You never know if I tie on the drop shot. And then to actually go somewhere where that experience was totally different. Now, I fished that Cabela's tournament for the 150,000, and Steve also fished in that tournament as well. And like I said, he placed in the one a couple of years back, which is really cool. So the guy knows what he's doing. And he is an offshore fisherman. That's what he does. His whole, not that he can't pitch and flip, he's got that. He does all of it. You know, he just prefers to see what those big marks are on your depth finder. When you look and see there's big swoops at the bottom, Steve gets the big swoops at the bottom. He wants to see what they are. So it was really, really neat to learn that. But again, if you can't reach in your bag and pull out anything, you know, who would have thought throwing a drop shot, you know, especially here in Florida? I'm baffled by the fact that actually worked, you know. But again, it really makes you think as an angler, do I give up? Do I move on? You know, how often do you move? I prefer to move. You know, and this weekend we moved a lot too. What was interesting is, like I said, we're beating up bank 100 yards at a time with no bites, but we'll get stationary in open water, and you know, there's fish. There's more fish than we had working 300 yards of bank sitting in the same area of open water, which to us looked open because, again, visibility was 2 inches in the area we were in because it was pretty much a washout area. But as far as the fish at the bottom of that washout, it was collecting them up. It was quite a few fish down, and good sized fish, really good sized fish. So again, do you move further away? Do you cross the lake? Do you pull 15 yards offshore? Do you pull 50 yards offshore? You know, these are the kind of things you need to ask yourself, and just setting up. I am moving up this 24. Yeah. Just setting up your thought processes. You know, sometimes it's moving back, catching the fish, transitioning, knowing what the weather's been like the last couple of days, what's the water temperature, what's the water clarity. All these things come into play, you know, and then you have the different species of fish. Now, bass are, you know, largemouth bass are largemouth bass, but there's movers. And these bass will spend their whole life moving from one place to another. There's resident fish. Those are usually your darker, blacker fish because they tend to stay in the same place, and they take a little bit different coloring to them, gives them a more natural brown or dark black color, and they'll blend in more with their surroundings and their bottom. And then there's bottoms altogether. You know, what's your bottom of your lake look like in your area? We saw crystal clear water, right? The bottom brown and muck, and so I thought right off the bat, let's get out of the brown muck, but let's stay in the crystal water. He took me down to crystal water, white sand bottom. You know what we caught? Nothing. Tilapia everywhere. Nothing. Went down into shell bed. Again, tilapia. So I think we had a situation where over the previous couple of days or weeks, we had the BFL down here. We had a lot of different tournaments over the last couple of months. They've really beat up the bedfish quite a bit. And I think a lot of fish were treated offshore. I really do. I think the end of the tournament season, or I'm sorry, the end of this most recent couple of tournaments, as well as the change in weather temperature, definitely put us in a situation where the fish were mobile. I really think that was the issue, is we were just catching more fish mobile by presenting baits that as the fish were going by, it was just happened to be in a target area. Rod's got a question. Beards, have a fishing pole stored in the shed. They got filthy, sawdust and grinding residue. What is the best thing to clean them with? Honestly, Rod, the bearings I clean with like parts cleaner. If they have bearings, I clean those with parts cleaner and an old toothbrush. Scrape them all out, make sure they're good and free of all debris. Maybe run them in a strainer in the parts cleaner, so that you get all the old lubricant and all the old any materials that might be in the bearings. That's how I would clean the bearings. As far as wiping them down, I don't just I physically wash mine. I literally take my whole setups apart, and then all the bearings get put in one place, and all the metal pieces and all the casings and everything literally gets washed like in the sink with water, and then I dry it all, and then I use my not shop vac but my air compressor, and I blow all the parts and pieces off and make sure they're all dry, and then I reassemble them, and then I use the manufacturer's preferred lubricant on the bearings. If you can't find anything like that, the Abu Garcia has a pretty good, it's like a graphite, and then your bearings, you want to use a liquid. You don't want to use a graphite. You don't want to pack the bearings. They're not like you think they are, so you use a liquid bearing. There's a lot of different manufacturers. I would definitely just look the manufacturer up of the reel and see if they have any kind of booklet on it. For sure. That would be my guess, is look for the instructions, my friend. When in doubt, pull out the instructions. Somebody's got them somewhere. They got to be on the internet. Yeah, it shouldn't hurt them. Dawn dish soap, simple green. I really don't think any of these things will actually hurt any. I mean, you're talking about the finish on the rod. Dawn, if you want to wash it with Dawn in the bathtub or something, I don't think that would be a problem at all. Dawn's, safe to use. Now, granted, if they're that old, you might want to be careful handling them at all, because back in the days, they used a lot of paint. Had lead in it, and the last thing you want to do is start, handling these things, and then it's chipping and flaking off, and then you're licking your fingers or rubbing your eyeball, whatever you tend to do, and the next thing you know, you're ingesting lead paint, so that's on you, however you choose to do that. I would just probably wash them with some Dawn dish soap. I would wash the reel in it too, if that's the case, because I'm sure it's not going to hurt it. So yeah, that's a good question. But I would, some type of degreaser is definitely the best. But if it's a painted product and it's an old painted product, you're probably going to lose some of the finish unless you're not really concerned with that. But the reality of it is, if it is pretty gunked up, man, you're going to want to definitely pull it apart piece by piece by piece and take a lot of pictures. Or set up a camera and let it record you taking that thing apart, because if you can't find any access to how to get that thing back together, at least you had a video of taking it apart, bud, where you sit everything down and lay it out, and really turn it into a day if you're interested in saving that old rod reel. And 79 Mini's got the idea. It's just simple green. Just strip it. Just straight strip it. Degreaser. That's the best thing for it.
Coastal Fever says you've made that mistake before. What's that? Stripping the finish off one of your reels?
Bass Queen says she's got some fish radar going. I've had those days, Bass Queen. I really have. And that brings me to my other theories. You know, I have a feeling there's fish everywhere. Like, I never go fishing and think, okay, we got to get to a certain spot. Like, I kind of think there's fish everywhere until you get out on my lake and you come out here on Lake Harris and the Harris Chain. You find out Lake Harris is 78,000 square acres of lake. And of that, maybe 3% has got fish in it. The rest is literally barren wasteland. There is nothing but sandy bottom, no vegetation, and open area. And it's really desolate in a lot of the lake out here. I never realized that until I really started riding around the lake and finding out. But the fish congregate in certain areas and they get thick. And if you've got the game or, you know how to get into them, you can do some damage here on Harris. A bunch of the pros just proved that this last weekend and for the last month, actually.
Oh, yeah, Coastal Fever. Yeah, you made the mistake of not taking pictures. Listen, bud, you've got all this fancy camera equipment. You got 35 GoPros, bud. Hook up a GoPro, get it, tripod it so you know what's going on because believe you me, you're not going to remember how half these things came apart. I can show you in my tablet. I can pull up the manufacturer's blueprint schematics of all the different reels that I have because it's come down to that point where I've actually had to go to the manufacturer's website to remember, oh, wait a minute, where did this part go? Where did this disc go? Does this go on the top or the bottom? Yeah, those are the horror moments. I added some more music tonight, guys, so we got a little bit extra stuff. No. Way before we had cameras, I was in my teens. Oh, yeah, those are the worst. I got some old Zebcos that are still in pieces, I'm sure, in a box somewhere out there. Nice. Bass Queen met Larry Nixon, Roland Martin, and Bill Dance. Was that at the Bass Pro Shop event there? The Bass event, the big Bass event or whatever it was for the Bass Pro, Bass Queen? We see Roland Martin. I've seen Roland Martin several times. He seems like a real nice guy. He's talked to me a few times, but, don't have time for little old me. I ain't caught none of them big double digits yet. You hear me? Well, guys, the main topic of the evening was to make sure that in your mind what you're confident with, but don't be afraid to expand. Just do not be afraid to get out of your element to do something different or try it at least. Like I said, I got to take a lesson from a guy that I consider like a fantastic offshore fisherman. I mean, he's proven it. He didn't really have anything to prove to anybody. He was more interested in seeing the whole camera and filming setup because he'd never had that experience before. And now he wants to move in that direction because this guy catches fish. That's not the issue. He fishes all the time and he knows what he's doing. So we'll get another trip. Steve and I we were talking about it the other day. We're definitely going to get a redemption trip and really work that river with the water moving. Once the water starts moving in the river, the fish push up and down, and that becomes a totally different level. That video that I have on the channel, Monster Bass on the Ocklawaha River, that one's in that same area where north of the area we started by about 25 minutes north in the Ocklawaha River. So to give you an idea where the Ocklawaha dumps into the Lake Griffin, that's where we were. In the northernmost northeast point or northwest point of Lake Griffin is where the Ocklawaha River drops in. So you guys should check that area out. That's a real interesting fishery, but at the same time, you got to really pay attention to what you're working with. You got to give yourself a pretty good idea of your depths. You got to have the ability to get into those depths. You have to have the ability to manipulate the fish in those depths. And if you're not bringing the correct rod and reel setups, or even willing to use the techniques. I mean, that's the whole thing. I fought the drop shot right up until the end of the day when I was like, that's it. I'm gonna throw the drop shot. Like I have to at this point. I'm wearing myself out. My worm kept coming up with giant chunks of vegetation on it every time I got it to the bottom. If I was throwing anything else, it was too high and out of the fish's range, because once we pushed off that shelf, that 3 foot, 5 foot shelf, it literally dropped right down to 10, 12, 20, 22, 28, 34 feet. Like it's all dug out trenching from the lock systems in the Ocklawaha River. So the areas that we were fishing, they can hold a lot of big fish. I mean, we were looking at the down scanners, and the sonar was just blowing up with big humps, blowing up. Then it's this question of, can you get down there? Dropping big worms, tried all that, tried a lot of different things. Ribbon tail, speed worms. I mean, we're every color, every size, 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, mag worms, ribbon tail worms. Did it. Wearing the worms out. Big pile of them on the deck when we got done with the day. None of them had anything. None of them had any ability to catch a single fish. But for some reason, a 4-inch worm rigged drop shot sitting 2.5 foot off the bottom and just literally floating there in a slow drag. They were grabbing it. They were grabbing it on the way by, and you wouldn't even realize you were hit until you saw your line moving, and then you realized, oh wow, look at that, he caught it in the slide. He just literally picked it right up on his way out to the main lake. So sometimes changing your environment, sometimes changing just a little distance, putting a little bit of distance between you and the shore, sometimes adjusting your bait, sometimes adjusting your presentation is the answer. And with that, guys, I appreciate you guys hanging out. Thank you very much for showing up tonight. Every Tuesday, it's always my pleasure to hang out with you guys. I will see what I can harness from this last trip so we can turn it into something interesting for you guys to see, so it's not a lost adventure, because I don't like those. But I'm sure the next adventure will be even better, and I'll have the ability to show you guys some good clips off of that one, hopefully. But again, you guys, it's been real. It's been fun. See you guys on the next one. See ya.